Joining me today is April Watson, aka Bodzilla. Bodzilla is a body love activist and she made history with Australia's first billboard as a plus-size bikini model in the campaign Beach Please. Not to mention, she also launched her own Bras and Things campaign. The campaign focused on loving your body, feeling confident in the bedroom, and beyond this, you've probably heard her on a bunch of podcasts or maybe you've even read her blog. Bodzilla, thank you so much for joining me. On the show, we do this thing where we ask listeners or members from the Talking Frank community to send in some voice memos with questions or things that they kind of need help or direction on.
Yeah.
Do you mind giving this one a listen and offering some sage advice?
Okay. Okay, so I was having a conversation with my friends the other day, and one of my friends started talking about how the new guy she was seeing had made a comment about the shape of her vagina, and he told her that she had an outie. And it started up this whole discussion about what different types of vaginas we have, and at least half of us sat there like completely shocked because we didn't even realise that there were different types, like other than our own.
I mean, I, in the wild, haven't come in contact with many, but I knew that there was a variety of shapes and sizes of vulvas. It's kind of scary that young women don't know, right?
And I don't know like what the reason is. I must admit, I think probably as I don't know, like an 18-year-old, I didn't know that they didn't all kind of look the same. But that's more the fact that the few that I had seen, cousins or like random, friends in the bathtub, because they all happened to look the same. Right. So I just had thought, oh yeah, that's just like nailed the brief. But then, yeah, as I got older, I had a housemate who loved to run around without her undies on. And I was like, hold on, what? She too had a different one from me. And now that I've seen a few, I'm like, oh yeah, they're not the same. None of them are really the same.
Yeah.
And actually, I was in Tasmania the other week, and there is a wall at the Museum of Old and New Art.
I've been.
So now that's it should be mandatory. Every school should take a trip, or maybe the wall should go on tour.
A traveling wall of vaginas. I mean, maybe I've just been looking at pictures of it for my job for too long that I was like fully aware that they were different. Like, is it an exposure thing, do you think?
Yeah, I think unless you're spending a lot of time outside of, say, like school with other people, there's probably like not that much opportunity. I think PE change rooms are a really vulnerable place and we shouldn't really be showing each other our bits there. That's not really appropriate. But it's one of the only places where I can imagine a group of people taking their clothes off all at the same time at that age. So I also think there's probably a likelihood that the sex ed conversations at school are using materials that were designed by someone who had an idealistic idea of a vulva, a man. And so the pictures don't represent the reality of the differences. That's probably the other issue.
Yeah. If sex ed is about procreation, then there's no space for curiosity about what they look like.
Exactly, even though obviously like it's in the name, really. Like if we're talking about sexual education, it should include what it means to have different body parts and that kind of stuff. Like I can't remember any instance ever of being shown a body part and the explanation of it not being purely biological, talking about the functions. But I think perhaps that's something that is missing. And maybe that's something that where parents shy away from having sex conversations, but that's where they might need to lean in a little bit, I guess, as they say, because it does leave a little bit to be desired as the kid who, it's like Santa Claus for 8-year-olds and then different shaped vulvas for 18-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid going through puberty, I learned very early about my genitals because they were different to my dad's. So there was a duo parent conversation about my sexual health and sexual identity. Maybe it does need to be a bigger conversation. That I mean, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, to be like, "Hey, mum or dad, do my genitals look normal?"
Normal, yes, finger quotes for those that are listening. And I think also knowing that it's pretty likely, although as you said, not so much in your case, but it's pretty likely that you're going to see the same thing that you've got in a family context, where your mum has the same, if you also have a vulva, etc. But I think
like that I've alluded just then that there's something unusual about my genitals.
Oh, look, I'm making an assumption about circumcision here, but I could be wrong.
Circumcised and I'm not.
Right.
But for anyone that was thinking I had two penises or
Yeah.
It's not that exciting. Well, should we keep listening?
Yes.
And it probably sounds really dumb, but we just like assume that everyone's look the same. One friend then started talking about how she was proud of her Barbie doll vagina because everything was nicely tucked away. And then another friend started talking about how she was self-conscious about her inverted nipples. And she'd even purchased this little like suction device thingy to bring them out before she had sex.
Wait, what? Like a penis pump for your nipples?
But also, like, theoretically, if you get aroused and the blood flow to your different parts of your body changes, they might just pop out anyway. How will you know if you're too busy suctioning them?
If your partner's doing a good enough job, they should probably just come out.
Or maybe they don't come out. Maybe
that's okay
just
as
one
well.
of them things.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just like, okay, this is what I'm working with. Like,
These are my
roll with
nips.
it.
Yeah, let's keep going.
It was a funny conversation, but also made me like kind of stressed afterwards. I mean, I already find it pretty hard to relax during sex. I'm very conscious about how my body looks, and now I feel like I also have to worry about whether my vagina is pretty or if my nipples are hard. And I'm sure guys like would also have concerns about the size and look of their penis and shape, but yeah, I just don't know if this is normal to be concerned about. Do the people that you sleep with actually even notice?
Bodzilla, do they even notice?
Do they even notice? I think that everything we do, we like and experience is mostly done thinking about ourselves. So I don't know. I'm trying to think about whether I would notice this. In terms of nipples, probably not. Like, I don't think I would. In terms of the look, shape, color, etc. of a vulva, I would notice, but only because it's like I'm working with this equipment. I need to make sure I understand how it works, what it's doing. Would I later ruminate on it and be like, oh, well, here's my thoughts on it? No, I have other things I must do. And I totally agree that anyone would have thoughts about how they look and how they're performing and how etc. But I think that if the person that you're sleeping with is having like a long thought about what your body parts look like and judging that, yeah, immediately goodbye. And I think that I understand that when you're new to having sex, especially, every single part of it that happens, you're like thinking about it all day long. But understanding that people have different bodies, I mean, it's critical to understanding that you are just one person in a group of people who are all different and unique. But it's one thing to think about it and just, oh, that person has an outie or that person's nipples are innies or whatever.
Yeah.
And another thing to have a problem with it, so to speak. And I think for the most part, it's probably pretty unlikely. The person is probably just really excited to be having sex with you at all.
And if they're not, they should be.
Yes.
I mean, I've definitely been in conversations where, like, you know, someone's had sex with someone and there's been a negative comment made about their genitals to the friend group, like whether it be the size of their penis was too small or, you know, other comments. But on the whole, I don't think people care that much.
And I find that I would think that, like most conversations where we negatively ascribe morality to body parts, it happens when we don't like that person. People we like, we don't talk about like that.
Yeah, you're trying to find a reason to be like, yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah, right.
So you think if someone who's a shit person is talking about your body parts, well, that's a them problem. Like that's something that says more about them than it does about you. 2 years of being the Bodzilla, and I'm like, let's just not talk about bodies at all ever. But also, I think that's one of those things where talking about people's genitals is just a bit, no, it's not a vibe. I'm not about it. So unless it's to be educational and discuss the different parts of vulvas and how awesome they are, etc.
Well, speaking of that, should we get into our big chat?
Mm-hmm.
What a segue.